Steve Hagerty, Part 1. The mayoral candidate took Evanston Live viewers into the Ebony Barbershop in the 5th Ward, where he got a chance to speak with resident Joyce Hill and owner Gigi Giles. Stay tuned now for Part 2.
So some people ask me, Malika, whether for the city investing in private businesses. I mentioned earlier that I'm absolutely for investment in business district areas and things like that, which I think the city's done a good job of, and I think we need to continue to do. And after the financial crisis in 2008, there was some move to make investments in specific, businesses. I'm on the board of First Bank and Trust. Bankers are professionals at loaning money, and even they don't always get it right? They have to have a reserve and everything that they maintain. And so I just think that when it comes to investing money into specific businesses, that's not something the city should be in the business of doing, right? I think it's something that, private businesses need to do on their own, or the banks, who have capital and so forth, step up and do that. And it's their job to, evaluate the risk of a business and so forth. And, we only have limited resources. I think we have lots of critical infrastructure needs and human service needs in this community. And that's where, the investments of our dollars, I think, should go, not into, private businesses. As we're driving by, I notice we've got some great, businesses over here, right? Goldfish Swim School, which just started up, and of course Temperance, started by an Evanstonian, Josh Gilbert, behind that. If you want to go down Dodge, we can head to the Robert Crown. And then before that, right, we have Erie Health Clinic. And what I love about that area that we just drove through, and that whole area back here, refers to themselves as the West End, is we have all of these really interesting businesses, right, where people are making investments, in their businesses. Banks are making investments and so forth. Obviously, Valley Produce and this whole area has certainly been picking up over the years. And a lot of people don't necessarily know about that, right? They know about businesses and restaurants downtown, but there's really this thriving business district over here. And again, as mayor, I really want to tend to, economic development across the city. I think it's critical that we maintain a really strong tax base, a diverse tax base, particularly at a time when our state is broke. Our state income taxes are going to increase. It's only a matter of time. And our governor has few choices, and he's threatening to reduce local aid, right? We need to keep looking at, our own assets and our own resources and saying, how best can we utilize these to make sure that we continue to have a dynamic and a thriving and an affordable, economy. Now, I know you're getting ready now to turn left here on Main Street, and we're going to go past the Crown Center. And the Crown Center has been something, obviously, that's up for a lot of discussion because it's over 40 years old. It's in pretty bad shape. It gets used for all sorts of activities, right? We've got soccer fields and baseball fields. We've got the Head Start program and early childhood work that goes on in this building. Of course, we have the ice rink for hockey that goes on here. And my family spends a lot of time at Crown because I have an 8-year-old who plays for the junior wild kids. It is a true community center. If you spend as much time as we do here or other families do here, you see everybody, coming through the Crown Center. I think, it's a priority. We need to figure out how do we, get a new Crown Center here in Evanston and a new community center. And, when I talk to different groups, this is what I'm talking about. We don't have unlimited money. We have to prioritize, and how we're going to use our limited assets. To me, investments in park and rec are critical. To me, this is the, primary, one of the primary community centers here. Certainly we have others with Fleetwood Jourdain. We have the fields over at James Park. I do think it's time as a city that we have, a really robust parks and rec strategic plan and what we're going to do but we do need somebody who, can balance all the different needs of the city and make a case for why we need to make investments in certain areas. And for me, Parks and Rec is one, and the Crown Center here is already underway. The challenge with the Crown Center right now is the city and the library, and they're proposing to put a new library here, which I think is great to serve this part of town and everything else. City and library account for about $12.5 million. Okay, there's a fundraising campaign going on to try to privately raise funds that is earmarked to try and raise $10 million. Obviously, I've been involved with the YOU campaign. We just finished that. That was incredibly successful. As mayor, I would work hard to try to make sure we're successful on that private fundraising campaign. And they're off to a really good start. They've got commitments for, several $1 million already. But even if they're successful, and I think they will be, and we will be successful with that $10 million, to do a new facility here, they're estimating that to be $30 million. You still have a gap, right, between, the 12.5 the city puts in, the 10 if we can privately raise that from philanthropy here in town, and the 30, you've got a $7.5 million gap, right? $22.5 million raised. So how do we close that gap? And I am not a fan of selling off city assets. Okay, there's been lots of discussions about Harley Clark Mansion. There's discussions about the parking lot next to the library, right? These are city-owned assets. They've been in our city for a long time. I am not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan of seeing our property taxes increase. I mean, if you go around and you talk to people, one of their biggest things is property tax is so high, I can't afford it if it continues to increase. I can no longer live in it.
Because you have to do everything legal because you might be mayor.
Yeah, I want to get in trouble. Oh, I thought I had special. Here's the bad news and the good news. The bad news, in my opinion, is we have a lot of decrepit viaducts in Evanston, and right behind me is one. This is the one on Davis Street. I've been assured that the viaduct itself, even though it doesn't look that way, is structurally sound. That's the responsibility of CTA. The other viaduct right behind that's the responsibility of Union Pacific. They are real eyesores, and they're all around town. And I think, at least when I drive under these, and I have to imagine when other people drive by, they think there's an opportunity here. And that gets to the good news. I mean, we are blessed as a city to have an incredible arts community here in Evanston. And about a year and a half ago, I convened a group of people to start to talk about these viaducts and say, what can we do? Because as far as I'm concerned, there's an opportunity to beautify this, at least as you're approaching and driving, and maybe it identifies the road that we're on, just Davis Street, or the part of town that we're in. And these are all over Evanston. And I think there's an opportunity to make a system out of these. And so there's something that connects one viaduct to another viaduct so that it becomes something that kids that grow up in this community 20 years from now, when they're thinking back on their childhood home, one of the things that they think about are actually those viaducts. Now, it's not a simple thing. It's not something that, as much as I love children, we're going to put children's, fingerprints up here. It really takes some thought, and it really takes some talent. And I think that we have that artistic talent here in town. And if we can organize around it, we can do something pretty spectacular, in my opinion.
Thank you.
what makes Evanston a special place. There's lots of things that make it special, but one of them is the fact that we have a world-class university in Northwestern University here. Evanston is what it is in part because of Northwestern, and Northwestern is what it is in part because of Evanston. And I think in the last 8 years, President Shapiro and Mayor Tisdale have done a nice job enhancing the relationship between the city and the university. There is naturally tension in any city between the largest employer and landowner and the city government. As mayor, I will continue on the path that Mayor Tisdale has led for us in terms of making sure we have a good, strong relationship with Northwestern University. You know, one of the things that they have done in the last couple years is created the Good Neighbor Fund, which I think is an excellent gesture on the part of the university to be a good neighbor here in Evanston. We're $1 million a year over the next 5 years. I think we're just finished year 2 of that. Will be at the discretion of the mayor in terms of how to invest that in the city. And I'll take that responsibility very, very seriously. We will continue to work with the university in other ways to figure out how we can, leverage the assets here to help the city of Evanston, whether it's our school systems, whether it's other programs that we have here in the city. And it works the other way too. My company, right, a small company, with over 100 people, has actually established relationships with Northwestern University that benefit the professors here and benefit the students here. We do stuff with Dance Marathon. We do stuff with the fellowship office. I want to look for that opportunity as well, where businesses and residents here can also give back to the university. I will say I've had some people come to me and say, well, I want to know, what are you going to do, day and night to remove the tax-exempt status of Northwestern University? Because obviously there's a lot of land here that they hold. I don't think that's in the best interest of the mayor to be spending his or her time, trying to work to eliminate their tax-exempt status. I don't think that's what we do to build strong relationships. I do think that we need to continue to work closely. I do think and hope that we will be able to continue the Good Neighbor Fund beyond the 5 years. I certainly would like to see that amount of investment increased if possible, or if not, investments made in other ways. I do feel strongly that as a good neighbor, the university should not be taking properties off of the tax roll and further burdening the people here of Evanston. And I'm going to, be very vocal in that opinion. But again, Evanston is what it is because of Northwestern, and I think Northwestern is what it is because it resides here in this great city of Evanston.